Welcome to Auction version 4, the latest event management software tool from Auction Systems. This is the first in a series of tutorials for data entry names. In this tutorial, I will show you the first name entry panel. This is the data entry name screen, and on the left is a list of all the names already in the data set. The first choice I must make is what type of panel details I would like to see. In the first name panel, if I choose Express, this form is greatly simplified. I have fields for first and last name of the primary and first and last name of the secondary and a phone number. Express is generally used for quick name entry of walk-in bidders at your event. Another choice for panel details is Comprehensive. This allows you to enter information in two new fields for both the primary and secondary name in this name record. Special Needs is where you might enter something like needs wheelchair access or severe peanut allergy. The Title Role field is where you might enter something like Acquisitions Chair or Board President. The default name entry panel details is standard and is usually sufficient for most pre-event data entry. If there is a need to enter a special needs for a specific name record, simply choose Comprehensive Data for that record, and you can switch back to Standard if that's going to be sufficient for the next name record. To add a new name, click the plus sign and choose Name. A new blank data entry form will open up on the right, and the first panel will also be open. This first panel is where you enter first and last names and company names. Also, a list of potentially matching names opens up on the right, and since I haven't started typing anything in the first name or last name field, every name currently in the data is a potential match. This list will filter down as I begin to type a name. If the name I type is already in the list, I can select the existing name record. This list on the right will go away if after I enter a few characters in the first or last name field, there are no longer any potential matches. When the potential matches screen goes away, the main name entry area will expand. The first fields in this panel are the drop-downs of Salutations, also known as Honorifics. In version 4, if this name record is for a household headed by a married couple, the primary salutation could be Mr. or Dr., and the salutation for the secondary name could be Mrs. or Dr. Or if you prefer, you can leave honorifics as none. But remember, since you have flexibility as to how names will appear on documents, you can decide by document if you would like to use salutations or not. You may want name tags to have only first and last names, but mailing labels may need to include the honorifics. These salutation fields are a drop-down, and you populate the drop-down for each salutation field by clicking the plus sign and adding a new salutation to the pull-down. But before I start typing a primary first or last name, I like to decide if this record is for a single person, an individual, or a couple that should be listed as a couple, which generally means the people have the same last name, or a couple that has different last names and therefore should be listed as individuals. This will make more sense later in the presentation when I show you examples. But the reason I like to make this decision first before typing is that if this will be a record for a couple, when I type the last name into the primary last name field, Auction will autofill the same last name into the secondary last name field. If I choose Show as Individuals, Auction will leave the secondary last name blank until I fill it in. Or this is the suffix field. This is where you put in junior or senior, or if this record is for a military person, if the honorific was captain, the suffix could be USN if the person is a naval captain, or USAF if the person is an Air Force captain. Nickname is handy if the person's name is something like Charles or Judith, and they often go by Chuck or Judy. You may want the mailing label to print out Mr. Charles Smith, more formal, but would prefer the name tags to be more casual and to pull from the nickname field, so it would be Chuck Smith. We will talk about documents in another tutorial, but just to let you know, when formatting a document, you can tell Auction to give precedence to the nickname field, but if the nickname field is blank for any record, it will pull from the first name field. If this name record is for a person or a couple who will be attending your event, if you're using bid numbers, you can give them one right here by either entering a bid number or clicking Next Bid Number. And if you would like the secondary name in the record to have a separate bid number, you can click that here too. But you don't have to give bid numbers in order to save a record. And you don't even have to assign bid numbers in the name entry screen. You can later go to the event prep task on the main home screen and assign bid numbers to all your attendees, and Auction will autofill these fields for you. The Quick Check button is also for attendees. If you capture the bidder's credit card number in advance, you can click this button, or if you're using one of our partners' credit card system that syncs with Auction, these buttons will be auto-clicked when Sync 1 occurs. If this button is dark, the words Quick Checkout will appear on this bidder's invoice, which means this bidder has already given you a credit card which you will charge for their purchases. They can avoid going to the cashier at the end of the event and can go straight to item pickup. So don't click this button unless you have a secure way to capture their credit cards and can charge it at a later time. Never save credit card numbers in Auction. This would not be secure. This last field is company name. If this is a name record for a company that donated an auction item, you may only have a company name at this time, and you may not know any primary or secondary names. You can save a record if all you have is the name of the company. The default way a name record will appear in lists and documents is alphabetically by primary last name. However, if this is a donor record for a donation made by a business, you should click List by Company, so this name will appear in the list alphabetically by the first letter of the company name. Let's look at a few examples of name entry. Notice a summary of what has been entered and saved appears in the panel header, and the header shows you how names will appear in formal, medium, and informal styles. You can also see these styles in the Display As window in the form itself. This record is for a couple with the same last name. I have also entered a nickname for each person in the record. Notice their formal name will appear as Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Smith III. Medium pulls from the first name fields and omits Salutations, so we have Thomas and Christine Smith. And informal pulls from the nickname. We get Tom and Chris Smith. If I had left out Christine's nickname, the informal would be Tom and Christine Smith, because if nickname is blank, informal chooses the first name. This next record is for a couple with different last names. I mark them as individuals because although they are a couple, they are not Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Notice the formal name is Mr. Thomas Smith III and Ms. Christine Jones. Here's the name record for an individual with no secondary name. This next one is a record for a donor company where List by Company has been selected. Notice on the left side of the panel summary, you see the company, and the right side of the panel shows you the primary name. And finally, this last record is for a couple that has a company name entered, but List by Name is the preference. Notice the names are on the left and company is on the right. Please continue with this series by watching the tutorial for data entry names, the address panel. Thank you for joining us.